Hi, I'm Mitra Sorrells in the PhocusWire studio, and I'm joined right now with Hopper founder and CEO Fred Lalonde. Just came off the stage from a panel discussion, primarily around NDC and some issues with airlines. So I'm curious, let's start with some of what was discussed. The topic of API distribution in general and NDC. You mentioned that the world will look very differently in 5 years. Tell me more about what you mean by that.
I mean, we're a different company than a traditional OTA because, first of all, we're mobile only. We have about 30 million downloads. We're actually the largest mobile travel app in North America, so we get more downloads than your Expedias and your bookings. So we focus only on that, and we're only app. And 90% of all of our transactions come from push notifications, which is a completely different business model than what you would have in a typical website where all these browser tabs are open and the consumer is shopping around. So what we've learned over the past 4 years is you can actually on mobile build a conversation. People will shop earlier, so up to 120 days. We see our consumers every 4 days, 5 days when they're active. So that gives us 30 to 40 opportunities before the booking to talk to them. And that helps a little bit, but where the magic for the NDC starts to happen is after the booking, we have another 40 to 90 days where the person still has their phone, push notifications still turned on. And that's what we're finding. We're able to ask questions, engage, and we're seeing these incredible open rates. So 70% on the NDC notifications. We're seeing 15% baggage upsell, all these crazy numbers that I don't think would be possible on the web. And what I was talking about on stage is that I think mobile is going to usher in a new era for NDC that isn't about displays and how these things work, but conversational commerce.
So it's that combination then really of the mobile and the NDC that is going to shift the way travel is transacted in the coming years.
We're known for a radical view around mobile, unsurprisingly,
Sure.
right? So I actually think that mobile is going to deeply transform everything. A couple of things happen. One is when a consumer goes from a laptop to their mobile phone as their purchasing device, so the first time you drop $2,000 for flights or hotels on your phone, right? There's a magical moment where the brand loyalty is up for grabs. Somebody will forget that they used to use, this or that website, and they'll go to a different app to do that. But secondly, if you build it properly about what Google calls micro moments, a lot of engagement, right, you get a conversation going. And so because of those things, everybody has a phone now, it's in your pocket. We look at it an average of 110 times a day. 40% of Americans sleep with it turned on next to their bedside and look at it at least once a night, right?
That's a little
Our
scary.
relationship to the mobile phone is unhealthy at best, right? But that creates the ability to build a completely new commerce funnel.
Very interesting. I guess we'll be talking about this probably for years to come.
All you have to do is go to China to see what's really happening.
Yeah, well, there was the interesting discussion about China earlier, and yeah, it does sound like we're all shifting that way slowly. So you just raised $100 million. Congratulations on that. Can you give us a little sense of how you're going to spend that money?
Yeah. Most of this raise has been around the international growth. So we've kind of ascended on mobile to being the dominant player in the US. Obviously the Expedias and the bookings are 100 times bigger on the web, but we're easily the fastest growing mobile OTA in the United States. But the thing that's been a surprise is our international growth is now outpaced everything we've done domestically. So we're looking at 300% in Europe, 300% in Australia, even Canada's 200% now, on an app that's essentially in English. Today, a quarter of all of our revenue is derived from phones that are outside of North America. So for us, the opportunity to become a global mobile brand is just huge right now. And I don't think it's ever happened. Most of the big groups either did it over 2 decades or they just did a lot of M&A work. So this money, comes in to just help fuel that international growth. So you're going to see us opening points of sale, building deep carrier relationships abroad, which we're already doing. And there's a huge push on the hotel side, hotels and alternate accommodations.
So there's a lot there to talk about. So let's first of all talk about how do you grow internationally? Talk a little bit more about that. How do you acquire those customers around the world?
So what we found fundamentally is marketplace rules apply. So you go back to the Jeff Bezos doctrine of price, selection, and convenience. We like to think Hopper's more convenient because it's on your side, it's watching 100 million fares a day for you, it's sending you push notifications. But the main gap that we've had to cover is price and selection. So if you look at it, at the beginning of this year, we added 70 low-cost carriers that were not on our platform before. We've gone to a multi-GDS shopping. We're doing virtual interlining now. All that stuff is being rolled out. And what we are finding is if you build a great mobile product and you put the right inventory, it pretty much grows on its own. We have about 50 to 70%, depending on the month that you look at, and this is millions of downloads a month, 50 to 70% is just organic, people talking about it. Mobile right now, in my view, is at the same place that online travel was in the late 90s. You didn't have to do a lot to get new users. If you build the offering right, you can get extraordinary growth.
I guess particularly in Asia, potentially, where mobile is already the common interface.
Yeah, so. for us it's different because we're tiny. We're only $1 billion, right? When in any other industry, that's a lot. But in travel, that's still a small player in terms of annual sales. But when you look at it, Asia mobile's growing, like crazy. But we're seeing Latin America as a sleeping giant, Mexico, even the outbound travel, international travel. But even within mature markets like the US and Europe, the millennial generation is coming of age, right? They're 35 now, and we're obviously a millennial product. So we're seeing massive, massive growth even in Europe and in the US on the mobile side.
So let's talk about the product itself. I know you started with the flights. About a year ago or so, you started adding in hotels. What do you see next, potentially? Is there a next sector that you can add, car rentals or activities?
I'm known for being crazy ambitious, right? So it's been 10 years and we're playing out a 30-year plan here. We actually think that the way the world is going to play out is a lot like e-commerce does in China. There's going to be 2 or 3 super apps for every category. And these companies that own these apps will have 30% market share. So that means market caps that are a multiple of Booking.com's if that was to play out that way. So what we believe is Hopper is on a trajectory which is going to take us multiple decades to become the largest mobile marketplace in travel in the world. And we're doing this by being the most customer-centric one. 75% of what we tell you is not to buy. There's just not a lot of other brands that can make that claim. And so for us, the focus for the next 3 to 5 years is global air and lodging in all of its forms, which is 80% of the wallet share, but all the high-frequency categories, clearly experiences, the categories on fire, tours and attractions, all that stuff is on the roadmap for the long term.
And so you touched on it there with accommodation. So you're going in for the full spectrum there of accommodations.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're 70% millennial, you don't have a choice, right? You have to compete against Airbnb. That's a given. But beyond that, we've actually found, because remember, we talk to our air purchasers 30 to 40 times for 120 days before they buy their air ticket. So we find that 80% of the time, what they're watching in air is a predictor of what they'll buy in lodging. So we basically have 120 days to help them understand which lodging they want and whether they buy it separately or packaged. Think of the amount of economic savings for a consumer if we're able to latently bundle or do the smart recommendations. And the other thing that's super exciting is 20% of all of our sales are through AI. So you come in, you say you want to go to Rome, and you end up buying Milan because my AI thought that was a better choice for you. That has never happened. And it happens because we see our users so frequently, we're able to map their intent, mathematically speaking, in a way that you just can't do on the web. So think of if we can get 1 out of 4 tickets to be sold by a machine, meaning you bought something you didn't know you wanted, imagine lodging. Imagine the amount of diversity there is in activities and lodging. We think that predictive commerce, meaning the app tells you what you want even before you know, is the future of how travel is going to be merchandised. And
so I know with this recent raise, you're looking to build that AI machine and capabilities there, correct? What about any interest with business travel? That's on the roadmap for next year. And we've grown a lot as a company. There's 40 of us 2 years ago, now there's 250. So there was a lot of company building we had to do before we could start diversifying like this. We're 90% leisure. So that means a weekend stay, a Sunday night stay. But what we do in terms of lodging and in air for especially unmanaged travel is incredibly interesting. So yes, business travel is very much on the roadmap starting next year. Okay, well that'll be interesting to hear about. I'm curious now, what is your advice for other entrepreneurs out there, other folks trying to break into travel as you've gone through this journey? Yeah, I mean, travel is the startup killer, right? It's probably one of the categories where so many ideas get tried and they die. I always give the same advice.
build whatever you think your idea is for how the world is going to be. So there's actually this quote that's attributed to Steve Jobs, which is actually, he stole from Wayne Gretzky. Like, obviously I'm Canadian. Yeah. And somebody asked Wayne Gretzky, how are you so much better than everybody that plays, in the league? And he says, it's very simple. I skate to where the puck is going, not where it is. And that sounds like a ridiculous statement, but when you think of it, we decided to go all mobile in 2014. And, we were debating this. We actually had a website. We had about 1 million monthly users. So I called all my buddies at Expedia and I said, hey, what do you think if I did a mobile only play? And they all said, Fred, you're crazy. Mobile is 10% of the market. Like, you're shutting off 90% of your customers. But we did it anyway because I'm stubborn. And what ended up happening because we did this is we developed an expertise in how to build mobile commerce that nobody else had, because they had to worry about the iPad and their website and all this other stuff. And so we became the best in the world at this, at least I think so. And that gave us an advantage. So anybody who's starting anything in travel anywhere, I always say, imagine the world in 10 years, not 10 months like your investor is going to want you to think, 10 years, and build the product that's going to soar for what that world is. And if you can't imagine that, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur.
That's interesting perspective, for sure. So tell me, if I see you here at our conference next year, what will be on the radar? What will we be talking about in relation to Hopper? I
hope we'll be 50% international mix. That's a big thing. I hope that you're going to see a fully fleshed out global hotel offering, that's for sure. I think you're going to see us, as we talked about, in corporate. You're probably going to see us in alternate accommodations a year from now if things go to plan. And these things always end up taking twice as much time as I want, so it's probably going to be in 2 years. But fundamentally, you're going to see us hopefully mature into the global marketplace that I was talking about earlier. Okay, a lot on that plate then for the coming year. Infinitely ambitious. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Fred, for taking time to talk to us. And thank you so much.